Right now on Matter of Fact, what does it take to keep kids safe in school?
If it means that this is the difference between life and death, bring it on.
We'll take you inside what may be the safest school in America. Plus, with the world at war, their romance was unthinkable and illegal.
He approached her and said, "You should know my name. I'm the man who's going to marry you."
But this African-American nurse and German POW risked everything for love. And why do more American moms die giving birth?
The delivery goes fine, and then there's a period of time where your body is still changing. I lost a lot of blood.
How these moms are pushing Congress to finally take action.
I'm Soledad O'Brien. Welcome to Matter of Fact, coming to you from New York City. This weekend's March for Moms in Washington, D.C. kicks off a series of events to raise awareness about maternal health. The U.S. has the highest maternal mortality rate for a developed country. Each year, between 700 and 900 women die due to complications with pregnancy or childbirth. Even worse, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth. Doesn't matter if they're rich or poor, doesn't matter if they're college educated or not. And more than half of those deaths are considered preventable. Christy Turlington Burns is a model, a mom, and became an advocate for maternal health after experiencing problems with the birth of her first child. She now heads the nonprofit Every Mother Counts. Dr. Lisa Gittens-Williams is an OBGYN who specializes in maternal fetal medicine. It's so nice to have you both with me. So take us back to 2003, the birth of your first child. I'm sure you had top-notch doctors and care every step of the way. What went wrong?
So I came into motherhood prepared and ready for this experience, and I had a lot of options. I live in New York City. I wanted to have an unmedicated birth, so I had a midwife as my main provider, but I also had a backing physician in the event that something not go as planned. The delivery goes fine, and then there's a period of time where your body is still changing. There's still birthing that's happening. So I did not deliver my placenta as you normally would in a very sort of straightforward way. And because of that, the doctor needed to be called and I hemorrhaged. I lost a lot of blood. And coming out of the experience, I had a lot of questions. And I came across staggering information at the time, which was that postpartum hemorrhage was the leading cause of death for girls and women around the world, and that we were losing hundreds of thousands of women every year.
It's a crazy statistic, and not just around the globe. If you focus in the United States, while all these other developed countries are making a lot of progress on maternal health, the U.S. is doing worse. Why is that?
The reasons are really many. It stems from education to the mom, to multi-system problems within the hospital and the organization, but we're beginning to attack it, and I think that's the most important part.
It definitely feels like people are starting to have the conversation in ways in which I'm not sure we were having even 5 years ago. It was also shocking, I feel like I've used the word shocking a bunch of times already, that Black women have a mortality rate that's 3 to 4 times higher than their white counterparts. And often I think we think of that as, well, there's a correlation with socioeconomic status. But actually, if you adjust for those and control for those, college-educated Black women, middle-class Black women are more likely to die in childbirth. Do we know why that is, Dr. Williams?
Well, some of the problems are related to underlying chronic illnesses. If you look at the obesity map across the country, it's much higher for African American and also Latino women. There's a higher rate of chronic disease like diabetes, high blood pressure. But even without those problems, there's a higher rate of mortality amongst African American women. And we need to drill down on that. And that's one of the new initiatives that are coming out to assess whether or not racial disparities are related to this increase in mortality amongst Black women. So these bundles have been introduced through the Alliance for Maternal and Child Health so that hospitals throughout the United States can then begin to implement these care packages. So what the bundles are similar to when you fly on Delta and you fly on American. If the plane is turbulent, they tell you to take your seat and put up your tray.
Right.
And so these bundles are evidence-based, protocols that hospitals can use so that every time something happens, everyone does the same thing. So the patient is hemorrhaging, so we call the blood bank, we put another IV in. The bundle helps you to recognize risks and then implement change.
You've been doing this work since your first child was born. Do you see progress globally?
Globally, tremendous progress. Incredible strides in countries like Bangladesh, in parts of sub-Saharan Africa. That's the thing that I think is so striking about the US. We were ranked 41st, but today we're ranked 46th. So we've fallen further behind. And that's what is, I think, begging the question. It's like, we made incredible improvements in the 30s, brought these rates down very, very low, and now we've seen the rise in the last 2 decades or so. And the outcomes are proven to be so much stronger when you have somebody by your side going through these times in your life.
Christy Turlington, Dr. Gittens Williams, thank you so much. Nice to have you guys with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next on Matter of Fact.
We just can't live in fear. We can't live in fear.
How schools are protecting students from the ground up. But should schools be designed with safety or education as the top priority? And it's the unforgettable love story you've probably never heard.
She becomes pregnant, and he's deported after the war ends.
How an African-American nurse in a POW camp fell in love with a German soldier. Did they live happily ever after?
School districts across the country are refocusing their efforts on campus security following the mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. A commission investigating the shooting said the design of the school contributed to the chaos and to the number of people killed. It took just 6 minutes to kill 14 students and 3 staff members. Since the shooting, several states have passed school safety initiatives, allocating money for school security measures. But what is most effective? Our correspondent Jessica Gomez reports from Texas, where school architects designed a building with shootings in mind.
Nestled in the middle of a neighborhood in suburban Dallas, George W. Bush Elementary School.
Hola, buenos días, ¿cómo estamos?
The dual-language school about to finish its 2nd year. And while it may look like any other elementary school, it was designed to withstand the threat.
Love you. Have a good day.
Parents like Autumn Cox fear the most.
You just kiss them and hug them as normal as possible, but in the back of your mind, you are concerned.
Hi.
Principal Maricela Helm feels the pressure every time there's news of a school shooting.
We're going to do everything we can to protect them.
Protection. It's part of why the school was built on a hill with minimal landscaping, so those inside can see who's approaching from the outside.
Good morning.
There's only one entry for guests, who have to go through 3 doors as well as a vestibule and the front office before gaining access to the main campus. Their IDs have been scanned, and each visit requires a sign-in.
So you can see from the office all the way down to the cafeteria.
Wide hallways were designed to create more visibility, and the front office, all windows. More than 36 surveillance cameras are always watching. During a crisis, school administrators can pull up that surveillance footage, but they're not the only ones with access. Local police officers in their squad cars, as well as dispatch, have a bird's eye view into every school in the district.
I can tell there's individuals coming and going through the front of the school. I can see the hallways. I can see directions that an individual may be moving.
Parents like the Lopez's are on board.
If it means that this is the difference between life and death, right, in a certain situation, bring it on.
People cannot wander through the school blindly.
Texas-based PBK architects designed the school. They say the Florida school shooting has rekindled district's demands for safety.
And there's not one client right now who comes to us to speak about design considerations that isn't asking this question right now.
PBK increasingly relies on help from local authorities, who say the goal is twofold.
You want to slow down the person with bad intent, and you want to accelerate the first responders' ability to get there quickly.
They're designing schools to be open with more visibility inside and out, keeping public entrances to a minimum, but with multiple levels of security like those vestibules. New and existing schools are also adding bullet-resistant glass and lockdown technology that connects schools like George W. Bush to police.
It makes us feel a little eerie, right? We learned that word, eerie.
Teacher Tanya Wood worries too much security could intimidate her third graders. They're already part of a generation where lockdown drills like this one are the norm.
I hope that we don't see a future that has metal detectors everywhere and security guards walking around with guns. It's a fine line between making sure that students feel safe and keeping them safe.
I love you. I love you too.
A tough balance for Principal Helm, who says keeping tabs on what's happening with her students is perhaps the most important part of the safety plan.
The closer we are as a community, the more supportive we are of each other, that gives us a huge advantage.
An advantage over fear.
We have a quote in our main office, que tus sueños sean más grande que tus miedos. May your dreams be bigger than your fears.
High fives.
I want them to dream big. I want them to be ready for school, and I don't want them to be scared.
In Collin County, Texas, for Matter of Fact, I'm Jessica Gomez.
School security spending is a booming industry. Last year, the market for school security equipment reached $2.7 billion, and it's expected to grow.
When we come back, making provocative statements is nothing new for Kanye West, but his comments on slavery sparked a firestorm.
That's just so stupid, we're not going to dignify it with an answer.
We've got a history lesson to set the record straight. And the World War II love story of an African-American nurse and a German prisoner of war that was more than just shocking. It was illegal.
He made her feel very desirable and wanted.
A remarkable story of enemies in love.
Today, 1 in 6 newlyweds marry someone outside their race. That's a steep rise since 1967, which is the year the Supreme Court legalized interracial marriage in the landmark case Loving versus Virginia. But 2 decades before that, there was another forbidden love story that would test the boundaries of America's tolerance. Eleanor Powell was African American and a nurse during World War II. Because of her race, she pulled a second-class assignment, which was working at a German POW camp in Arizona. Army leaders put the black nurses with the POWs to avoid the risk of romance. They didn't think the prisoners would find the African-American nurses attractive. But an unlikely love story did unfold. Frederick Albert, a soldier in Hitler's army, fell in love with Eleanor. Journalist and author Alexis Clark uncovered the story and wrote a book about it. It's called Enemies in Love. It's so nice to have you with me.
Thank you for having me.
So, how did they meet?
They met in the mess hall at the prisoner of war camp, and Frederick was a cook at the time, and this was during one of the lunch or dinner. And so Eleanor enters, and Frederick said that it was like he was under a spell. He approached her and said, "You should know my name. I'm the man who's going to marry you."
So you write about this in the book, and one of the things that's so strange, I mean, that's very, very romantic, but let's remember, Frederick is fighting in Hitler's army.
Correct.
And Eleanor is a black woman, and we're talking about the 1940s. So sort of everything is wrong about this in every which way. Was Frederick not ideologically aligned with the Nazis?
So he just was a soldier drafted like anyone else who had to be drafted. So he didn't hold those views.
How did they grow their romance and their relationship while one is a POW and one is working under pretty not great conditions?
He was kind, and they basically started to fall in love when he volunteered in the hospital. And through their own flirtations, or sometimes he held classes, baking classes, she would attend. And he made her feel very desirable and wanted, and they actually just fell in love and then would be together in secret. But apparently, word got out that he was seeing her, and he was punished severely, beaten. So that was the irony. That really wasn't about that he was being with an American, he was being with an African American.
Once the war ended, they were able to make their relationship, I'm struggling for the word, because it's not really official, because of course interracial marriage would be illegal until 1967.
Correct. She becomes pregnant. And he's deported after the war ends, just like all the Germans, POWs, they're sent back. And so she returns to her native town of Milton, Massachusetts as an unwed mother, pregnant with a German prisoner of war's baby. But that was their plan because they knew he'd have a greater chance of being able to return to support his child. And that's exactly what happened.
Eventually, they moved back to Germany.
Yes, yes.
Why?
He was the son of a very prominent engineer who had a company. So he was being positioned and groomed to take over. And because they struggled for housing, to find jobs as a mixed race couple.
In the United States.
In the United States.
They thought Germany, post-World War II, post-Hitler, might be a better option.
So they moved back to Germany in his parents' large, beautiful home, and it was a terrible experience.
I was going to say, Eleanor was not welcomed by his family.
By his family, and just even the town at large, they just were so unfamiliar with blacks in general. I mean, they saw the black GIs who were, you know, in the occupation, but as far as this white German from a very wealthy family bringing home a black wife, I mean, it was just unheard of.
The book is a great look at that chunk of time in American history. It's called Enemies in Love, a German POW, a black nurse, and an unlikely romance. Alexis Clark, so nice to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet.
Coming up next, how did the party of Abraham Lincoln go from freeing the slaves to this?
The Republican National Committee chairman formally apologized for exploiting racial polarization.
The political realignment of both parties from the Civil War to today. Plus, the sounds of the past preserved for the future. The new museum dedicated to protecting endangered sounds.
Now to our weekly feature we like to call We're Paying Attention Even If You're Too Busy. Sadly, I'm sure nobody was too busy to miss what Kanye West had to say this past week. He's been tweeting like crazy, making controversial comments about race and politics. Tweeting this: Abraham Lincoln freed and protected the slaves, and he was a Republican. Democrats protected the rights of the slave owners. Then he followed up in an interview on TMZ where he said 400 years of slavery was a choice. So, a history lesson. Abraham Lincoln was elected in 1860 as a Republican. He ran against Southern Democrats who chose to protect slave owners. This is correct, and a high school history class, by the way, would have told you that. The key thing to know is that over the next 100 years, the parties would swap positions on race and civil rights. The Great Depression in 1929 marked a big shift for black voters who left Lincoln's Republican Party. It was Franklin Delano Roosevelt's wife, Eleanor, who pushed anti-lynching legislation, while FDR himself created the Fair Employment Practices Committee, which banned discrimination of African Americans in the defense industry. And by 1948, Democratic presidential candidate Harry Truman runs on a pro-civil rights platform that called for integrating the armed forces and ending discrimination for federal employees. That caused the departure of many Southern Democrats from the Democratic Party.
And we bid you goodbye.
In 1968, it was Richard Nixon's Southern strategy that recognized the racial tensions during the Civil Rights Movement and intentionally appealed to white Southerners' racial hostility. In 2005, the Republican National Committee chairman formally apologized for exploiting racial polarization to get votes. As for slavery being a choice, that's just so stupid, we're not going to dignify it with an answer. But TMZ reporter Van Lathan had a very good answer for Kanye, and you can look that up online.
When we return, do you know what that sound is? A new online museum preserving endangered sounds before they're gone. How many do you recognize?
Kids today will never know the sound of inserting a game cartridge into a Nintendo. That's just one of the sounds technology has erased. But there's an effort to save all of those nostalgic noises. It's called Conserve the Sound. It's an online museum for vanishing and endangered noises. Remember the clicks of a rotary phone? What about pressing play on a Walkman? And word processing has definitely changed a lot. Even the sound of typing on cell phone keyboards is becoming a thing of the past. That's why Conserve the Sound wants to archive those disappearing sounds. The project started in 2013 with funding from a German art and film institute, but it's grown substantially as more sounds fade into oblivion. That's it for this edition of Matter of Fact. I'm Soledad O'Brien, and we will see you back here next week from Washington, D.C.